Well, hello everybody. Today is Tuesday, January 15th, 2019, and welcome to the Transition and Change class. Now, I have to tell you that the class is over because I didn't turn the recording on once during the class. We had a wonderful discussion, and it just didn't feel appropriate at any time to actually turn the recording on. And so what I'm going to do in this case, which I'll probably do in all classes that end up like this, is kind of go over a summary of what we talked about for those of you that weren't able to be with us, and at least you can kind of get a sense of what we talked about. But I guess this is also just to say that while you will get the recordings, try to get on 1 or 2 calls live every month if you can, because there's something that you get from the discussion that is personal, and it gives you a sense of connection and community. And that's one thing that happened on this call that I cannot replicate on the recording, and that is that we had people on the call share the transitions that they were going through. And I asked a series of questions, and there were 4 questions. What's the transition you're currently going through? How far into this transition are you? And what have been some of the hardest parts of it so far? And then what's been the most helpful to you when it comes to getting your needs met and navigating the transition? And what do you think you'd most likely like to hear about other people's experience? And what I did, because I kind of knew that this was going to happen, is I sat there and I just kind of typed in notes as to what people said as we went around our conversation circle. But the transitions that people are going through that are in this class, actually, they're very different, but they overlap. So we have quite a few people going through divorce or separation. We also have quite a few people going through career transition, selling a business, looking for a new job, actually not working right now, or working right now. Then there are some other little things like reconnecting with estranged family members. There's a couple people that are in this class that have both gone through that. And then when we talked about kind of what people are experiencing from their transitions, things started to blur. So in the beginning, when we tried to name our transitions, we saw differences. But then when we started talking about what was happening with the transitions, we found out that whether it was a job or a person, the emotional experiences were very much the same. Grief over the loss of a marriage, more painful made even when you find out that the other person has somebody already and you don't. Just that horrible loneliness, the fear of rejection, the fear of going out there and dating again and thinking, I am never going to find anybody again. A couple people mentioned being 29, 39, or 49 and going, gosh, I have to find a relationship by the time I hit that next decade, because I'm just going to feel horrible about myself if I'm not in a relationship, and just how awful that feels. But then realizing that we've all gone through that. But then also that same fear is, what if I never get the right job? What if I never find the right career? What if nobody ever wants to hire me? And how horrible that feels. Really the isolation and feeling alone is probably the scariest part of it for people. And we talked about this on the Accelerated Growth class, that everybody has a need to belong. Everyone has a need for connection. And what tends to happen sometimes is we put a lot of our eggs in one basket. So it could be a relationship, or it could be a job. And we end up getting a lot of security and a lot of our identity and a lot of our support through that. And then when that stops working, then we're lost and we don't know what else to do. But the thing to know is, going through these transitions help you get more in tune with who you really are and help you get grounded in the real you. So that's the thing to understand, because throughout our conversation as we were talking, the positive things that people were feeling is that, there's a lot of hope, and that maybe what they were clinging to wasn't anywhere near as good for them as what's possible in the next phase. So maybe the career that you've clung to for so long isn't anywhere near as good as the unknown, which is what you're moving into, but you're not going to know that until you try, and that's scary, of course. Here are some things that people shared that helped. So the anniversaries of painful emotional experience. So the year after you get fired, or the date that your husband said he wanted a divorce. And of course they break it to you on Valentine's Day or some ridiculous thing like that. And then that day comes up the following year and you feel like crap, but you completely forgot why. That a lot of times just knowing that certain anniversaries are going to hit you, certain times of year are just going to hit you, and just to prepare for that. Positive visualization was really helpful. Reaching out to your network. Strangers can often be a lot more supportive than people who know your intimate situation, because strangers aren't attached to you in any way. All they're having is one conversation with you, so they can share stories about their own situation, but they're not as drained and worried for you. And I think the reason why people who are close to us when we're in transition, it's harder to get support from them is because they're actually so empathic that they're feeling our pain. But the downside of that is that when they're with us, they're feeling our pain. And then they're trying to bring both themselves and you out of pain. And so they get into fix-it mode and they get stressed out on your behalf, and it makes it miserable. But a stranger, they have no attachment to what happens to you. And so they can share what they have to share with you and talk to you and give you support and encouragement. And it's very light for them. It doesn't weigh them down because they're not actually in your situation. So sometimes strangers can be way more supportive than your close circle. Let's see, what else did we talk about that was really important? I think one of the things that I got out of listening to the round robin with everybody is that as we shared our stories, people felt closer and closer and they resonated. And we had some people who had a career change story, and some people who had a divorce story, and some people who had a health story on the same call. And so at the beginning of the call, you would think all of their transitions are so different from each other. But then as they started sharing stories, everybody resonated with every part of what they shared. And so I thought that sharing was really rich. And I kind of ended by saying, you know, I have a dream for the Aspire community, and that is to create a place where we can all get support, where none of us ever have to feel alone, because we know that in this community there are people that are going through similar experiences, and we have enough people in this community that we are close to so that we always know that there's somebody that we can reach out to and call. So that's what I'm working to create and build in the Aspire community. And but also other support groups. Having more than one support group is really important. And we all talked about the effort it takes to make friends when you're older, but how important that is and how well worth the effort it is to build a circle of friends and in different areas. So a divorce support group, a self-improvement group, going to a class, but having 3 or 4 different groups that you meet with, and that can give you support, but it also gives you more than one resource to go to when you have a need. So we talked about hiring a fix-it guy, or, you know, having people that you can hire out when you have just a very tangible, practical problem you need solved that you're used to leaning towards somebody else to solve, right? Or talking to a bunch of LinkedIn people that are strangers, but information interviewing to get information when you're looking for new ideas for a career or something. So I'm going to wrap up. But I think this is something that I never even had time to go through in the class, all of our resource books. There's no specific reading assignment for next month. Really what I want people to do is be able to get on the call and talk. But I have tons of books listed here that really help with different things. So William Bridges is a great book just on transition, and he's well known in the psychology field, and people love his book. We have an Aspire model of change that I'll go over at some point. Wishcraft is a great book to help you, make your dreams come true. The Dip is a more business-like book, but kind of just talks about change in terms of needing to make sure you have the resources before you make a big change. And there's many other books here that talk about various specific kinds of change. For example, managing friends and former peers. If you're moving from a position where you have people that are your peers and now all of a sudden you're managing them. So there are a lot of very specific transitions that we will delve into on this call as well. But for now, we're just getting to know each other and really looking at some of the stories that we're experiencing and sharing them, sharing what fears we have, and also sharing with each other when we failed or gotten stuck and how we've gotten out of it. And I think that's been most important. So for those of you who weren't able to get on the class, I hope that gives you a good summary of it, and I hope you can make it next time. Bye-bye.